What are 5 big mistakes hunters make? We're going to find out today. Hey everybody, welcome back to LocaCarnivore, the hunting, guns, and adventure channel for smart people. You're smart because you're watching us. Yeah, we might not make the cover of a major news magazine, but then again, we're not making mindless drivel that'll bore you to tears either. Hey, remember, you're going to want to stay for the entire video today because we've got great information from beginning to end. Well, like we said in the intro, there's 5 big mistakes that hunters seem to make over and over and over again. I've made them. I don't know how many times, quite frankly. Hopefully I've learned my lesson, but then there are days out there in the field where I go, oh, you moron, what were you thinking? You know you're not supposed to do that. And I've seen, I don't know how many hunters over the years make these mistakes as well. So we're going to try to help you get just a little bit smarter so that you'll be a much more successful hunter. At the moment, the LocaCarnivore project has only one source of funding, and that's you, the viewer, as a member of our Patreon family. Please go to the link in the description. You can then go over to our Patreon, show us a little love there, contribute at a level that you feel is appropriate. There are some goodies for each level, depending on what you contribute. And that way we can afford to make better videos and more videos for you. Right, the first big mistake that hunters seem to make, day in, day out, year after year, it has to do with the wind and reading and understanding the wind. And yeah, there's a lot of people, they go around with a little puff bottle with the talcum or whatever, and they go, oh, which way is the wind going? Which way is the wind going? Some of those people know what they're doing. Some of those people really don't understand what the concepts are behind it. The biggest problem that hunters seem to have with wind is not understanding how wind is going to get generated and how it's going to progress during their day, depending on the terrain they're hunting in, and also things like latitude can also influence it as well as elevation. Now wind, what is wind? Well, basically it's air movement. And why does air move? Well, it's because the earth gets hot on one side of the planet and cold on the other side, and then 24 hours later it reverses itself and it's hot and warm and everything. So that heating of the Earth's surface causes air to rise, and then the air next to it, we can't have a vacuum here, so as the air rises above the warm ground, the air next to it flows in and tries to flow up along with it, and after it gets high enough it cools down and it settles back down to the ground, especially after it gets dark. So that's why you have wind, just in a real simple math there. You can really geek out on this. You can make an entire career about wind. Why do you need to know the wind? Because game animals get a huge amount of information about their surrounding environment from their noses. They have a much more developed sense of smell than you or I do. And all you have to do is just look at how long their snouts are, and you can understand that those nostrils are full of nerves and sensors that give them all sorts of information about the scents that are on the air. That's a big way that they stay safe and detect predators and try to get out of the way of predators before they become somebody's lunch. Now, of course, you're a hunter, so your job, you're a predator, is to make one of these animals into your lunch. So the biggest problem that hunters have when it comes to wind is they either A, don't understand wind at all. They just don't understand why it's generated, where it's going to come from, and how it's going to shift as the day goes by. Or they forget or don't realize the importance of working with the wind and understanding how to hunt with the wind. So let's work on problem A, how the wind is generated. I already told you in simple terms what causes wind. Hunters, however, you don't have to worry about global wind patterns and diurnal heating and cooling of the planet. What you have to worry about is what's the wind going to do in the particular area that you're hunting at. And quite simply, it just is a matter of what the terrain is, and also how sunny it's going to be, and if there's any prevailing weather fronts in the area or scheduled to come through the area. Those will affect it. So you have localized winds that flow during the course of the day as the earth heats up and then as it cools down in the evening. And then you have prevailing winds, which are more important, say, if you live in a coastal area or something like that. And then there are frontal winds, which are going to change the wind situation from what just the local winds are. Now, local winds basically are as the air heats up if you have any sloping terrain whatsoever, and there's very few places in North America particularly, but certainly anywhere else in the planet where there's not some where the land is completely flat. Kansas maybe being the exception. But there's usually higher terrain and lower terrain. Basically, you're going to find in the mornings, just as the sun's coming up and into the mid-morning hours, the air will be flowing downhill off any higher terrain and then across the lower terrain. That's because that air has cooled down, and cool things tend to sink. Cool air sinks, so it'll just follow the grade of the land and then flow out along the flatter areas. Things that can influence that flow are large forested areas, tree lines, buildings, all sorts of stuff like that. So you can get what's called a lee effect. In other words, the air is not moving as dramatically on the downwind side as opposed to the upwind side of an object, say, let's say a tree line. And you can also get swirl as the wind hits that imperfection in the terrain, whether it's tree line, building, wherever. It can get kicked up, over, and then it can swirl on the downwind side of that, which can give you varying degrees of which way the wind is coming from. As always, remember to give us a big like on this video. Please subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our family. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you get notified every time we come out with a new great video for you. So in the early morning hours, that wind is going to be flowing downhill. So if you can get your maps out, especially in this age of wonderful satellite maps and topographical maps, and you can see how the terrain lies in the area that you're going to be hunting. Now, once the sun gets up high enough and starts heating one side of that valley or the other, you're going to have the air beginning to rise on that you're going to have the air start to rise on that sunlit area, and then that's going to draw air from the surrounding areas upwards. So about mid-morning, you're going to find that the winds are going to switch to flowing back uphill. And also the velocity may start to increase depending on various factors as far as the terrain and things like that. So and then by midday, what you're going to have is generally a full upslope flow of wind. And then as the afternoon progresses and the higher elevations begin to cool again, or you get areas in shadow, those will cool down first, and then that air is going to drop down and then start influencing. It's going to draw that air back off the higher elevations and back downhill. Hey, what do you think about what we're saying today, or in general? We'd love to hear from you. So go ahead, down in the comments section there, tear it up and let us know what you think. Now, all this kind of changes if you have a front coming through the area, whether it's a warm front or a cold front. That wind is going to shift and come predominantly from the direction that cold front is advancing or that warm front is advancing from. So if you have a front coming in from the west to the east, as that front arrives, the ground portion of that front, that wind that might have been localized and doing, say, flowing downhill, east to west or wherever, suddenly that wind will come in from the direction of the front. It will increase in speed and will stay relatively sustained with gusts. And of course, wherever that's going over terrain, obstacles and things, you can get swirl of the wind and things like that. So what do we do about this? Well, that brings us into the second part of this mistake that hunters tend to make. Even if they do know the wind, they don't monitor it and think about what they're doing. So in a nutshell, what you want to do is look at the way the wind is going and keep an eye on that. You need to think in terms of wherever the wind is going, that is where your scent is being carried. And so anything downwind of you is smelling you, animal-wise, and they're aware that you are in the area. And they can also get a fair idea of how close you are based on how strong that scent is. And anything upwind of you hasn't probably detected you yet. So I just basically, the theory I use, or the rule of thumb if you will, is I hunt upwind. In other words, I look and really scan and watch the upwind area, and I guard downwind. In other words, wherever the wind is, especially say if it's flowing into my face, I'm hunting that area, but I know the wind is going behind me. I will turn periodically and look behind me to see what's going on. Particularly, especially where we hunt and live, I'm always concerned about is a grizzly bear coming up behind me, or a lion, mountain lion or something like that, another predator. So that in a nutshell is the wind. You got to know your wind, why it happens, be able to predict where it's going to be, and then hunt with it in mind all the time. And then you'll be much more successful. Hey, would you like more content than what you're getting in just this video? Go to the LocaCarnivore website. The link's down in the description, of course. And while you're over there, we'd appreciate it if you just follow the link that's at the website into our LocaCarnivore store. You know, we've got a store, of course. We've got to try to make some money at this. Anyway, you can get some great LocaCarnivore branded merchandise, and we'd love your support that way too. Thank you. All right, the second big mistake that I see people make, and that I have made, of course, as well, is scouting, or rather a lack of scouting. And that scouting means getting out into the area you anticipate hunting and getting a lay of the land. And it's not, some people think scouting is you go out like 2-3 days or whatever, maybe 5 days before the hunt and kind of look around or whatever. That's not scouting. Scouting actually is year-round activity, and you should be doing it year-round. Even if you're not hunting in a particular area, you should still be touching that area, going to it in different times of the year, and observe the animals, observe like how much snow cover you tend to get, how's the foliage when it falls off the trees, how does that affect the sight lines, things like that. And if you can, walk that terrain or get out into it, see what it's like from high, see what it's like from down low, get an idea of the lines of sight, and also start getting an idea of which way the winds tend to go during the various times of the day. Now, if there's any mistake that I personally continually make, and it's something I struggle with all the time, and I know a lot of other hunters struggle with this a lot too, and that is patience. Hunting is a game of percentages. You have to be in an area, you have to put in your time, and it's just a law of averages. It's sooner or later something's going to shake loose for you. Yeah, there's some skill involved. I mean, the ability to, like, you know, call in an elk or something like that, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of skill involved, but at the same time, it is a game of averages. It's a percentage game, so you have to get the percentages in your favor. Now, one of the biggest ways you can get the percentages out of your favor is by not being patient, and that is, patience comes in a lot of different varieties. One type of thing that I see hunters do a lot, and I've done occasionally too, unfortunately, just you know, let a lot of meat go wandering back into the forest as opposed to into the freezer, and that is when you see an animal, it's, you know, it's shootable, it's safe, you've got the right tag, you're in the right spot, everything, you're good to go, you've got the green light to shoot, but for whatever reason the animal's not quite in the right position, or they're just, something's not going right, but you just want to go get them, so you maybe get up and you try to move in on them, or you say, oh, maybe if I'm over here a little bit better, I'll have a little better shot angle, and you start getting up there, or they're up on a hillside and they're like, well, if I just get up there real quick, you know, maybe they won't see me or whatever. All these little stupid games that go on in your head that really trip you up, instead of when you see an animal, giving it a minute or two and asking yourself a few key questions. What's the animal doing? Where's the wind coming from? Is the animal alert? Do they know I'm here? Do they not know I'm here? Are they oblivious to everything? Are they paying attention? Are they very hyper alert and waiting for something? They're ready to bolt, or are they very calm and relaxed? And that's going to dictate a lot of what you can and cannot do. You want your movement to be a patient movement, slowly, deliberately moving along. So you want to exercise some patience. That's really a big thing. Don't make that mistake. Don't let your desire to get the job done get in the way of you doing the job well. Hey, don't forget to share this video. Send it to your friends, send it to your enemies, send it to your second grade teacher. We don't care. Just go ahead and share it, please. The fourth big mistake that I see hunters make a lot, and this has something to do with, the third one we talked about, which was patience, and it's somewhat related, but that's range. And by range, I mean the range you're going to shoot at. I found that both inexperienced hunters and or impatient hunters have a tendency to want to shoot as soon as they see that animal, and wherever it's at, it's way out there, especially if it's way away from them, especially if it's a far distance from them. There's this tendency to just get that rifle up and let's take that shot and get this to happen. And the problem is the farther you get out, the greater the opportunity for error. And it's not just shooting error. I mean, the winds could be different. So what I think about in terms of range, now everybody's got their own effective range. I mean, how far you can shoot. For me, I'm kind of starting to push the envelope when I get past 300 yards or so. Have I made shots at 300 yards and a little beyond? Yes, but I've also missed them. For most hunters, and in most hunting situations, game animals are generally taken at 200 yards or less. Are there people? There's Now the problem is there's technology these days that will allow you to, at least on paper, take an animal at 1,000 yards. We're not going to discuss the wisdom of that one way or the other, or the ethics of that one way or the other right now. However, keep in mind that the farther you are from your target, the greater the chance for error. And the other issue is too, is once you get the animal down, if it's 1,000 yards away, you got to go find it. In the meantime, it's cooking probably in the sun, unless you dropped it just before sunset or something. And then even in the dark now, you got to find it after going far ways. So it behooves you to keep your ranges relevant to your shooting skill and your equipment level. So the bottom line on range, I like to refer to a axiom that was developed by a World War II fighter pilot named Hugh Zemke, who was from Montana, oddly enough, and he fought in World War II, flew in World War II, multiple ace. He drilled into his pilots that he commanded the basic axiom of get in close, and when you think you're too close, go in closer. And that's the way I like to think about this whole proposition. Getting in close, as close as you possibly can under the circumstances, is the best thing possible. And the fifth big mistake that I see hunters make, and unfortunately, like I said, I've made all of these, so I give you the mea culpa right now. I am not without sin on any of this stuff. So learn from my experience and also what I've seen a lot of other hunters do. And I would say the fifth big mistake that hunters make is clothing. And I'm not talking wearing the latest groovy camo pattern and all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about dressing for the environment. If you don't dress properly for the environment in which you're going to hunt and for the amount of time that you're going to be out in that environment, because your ability to thrive and survive in a given climatic condition, whether it's hot or cold, is based on exposure time. And if you don't have the right clothing for the amount of time you're going to be exposed to that environment, then you're going to be very uncomfortable. And not only are you going to be uncomfortable, you potentially, depending on the environment and the conditions, you could be putting yourself at severe risk for your own personal health. If it's too cold and you're not dressed for it, you potentially could suffer frostbite, hypothermia, lots of other maladies that come with the cold. Likewise, if you're in hot conditions and you're not properly dressed for it and prepared, you could heat stroke out. Make sure you have really good, solid clothing that you just don't think is going to work, but you've actually tried it in those conditions. Make sure it works in those conditions before you get out there. So get the right clothes so you'll be comfortable and you can concentrate on the business at hand, which is getting a game animal, instead of how miserable you are. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us here today at LocaCarnivore. We hope you got some great value out of this video. And as always, stay safe, stay aware, please be kind to people, and don't run with scissors.